Hello, my name is Mr. Dowling. I believe that all of the areas of knowledge are important. They all have value. They all connect us to ourselves, each other, and the universe. And as such, I believe that they should be treated equally.
And I am Dr. Dowling, Professor of the Natural Sciences, and I think that the natural sciences are superior to all other AOKs. We have just seen two Mr. Dowlings, but there is actually only one essay title 3, and it is this. Come and have a look, It is there solid justification for regarding knowledge in the natural sciences more highly than knowledge in another area of knowledge, discussed with reference to natural sciences and one other area of knowledge? Wow, I don't think I've ever said knowledge so much in my life.
Let us begin by doing something that we should all be familiar with right now, and that is the breakdown of the essay title. So the first word that I would highlight here is actually the word is, and that's important because it shows us what kind of question this is, and it shows us what kind of answer the examiner is ultimately going to expect. Let's think about another is question. Is there a chance that you will like this video? Well, the answer is hopefully yes, but it could be no, it could possibly be maybe. Yes, no, maybe. I would argue that we need one of those responses to this question. A solid justification. I think that's the next important part of this essay title. A justification is something that you use to support your knowledge claim. Now, this could just be some explanation. It could just be a process of reasoning. But bear in mind that we are being asked to think about solid justifications. Maybe that leads us towards the notion of evidence proof. So just a simple explanation is not suffice. Maybe this question is asking us to focus on something that is solid, and that would be possibly, depending on your definition and your interpretation, some kind of concrete proof or evidence. It's asking us to focus on the natural sciences and whether there is solid evidence proof, perhaps, for regarding knowledge in the natural sciences more highly than another area of knowledge. You might want to think about more highly. What exactly does that mean? Does it mean that it's better, superior? If so, better, superior in what kind of ways? You need to talk about the natural sciences and only one other area of knowledge. Based on what we have just discovered, you could say that this question is basically asking you the following. Is there solid justification that A is better than B? A being the natural sciences, B being another area of knowledge. I want to give you a little demonstration, a little microcosm of how this kind of question can be responded to. So I've changed the A and the B, and I am going to ask this question. Is there solid justification that Liverpool FC is better than Manchester United FC? As a Liverpool football fan, I am obviously going to argue that Liverpool Football Club is better than Manchester United. However, in order to do that, I need to be able to provide some kind of justification. Is there some kind of justification for Liverpool FC being better than Manchester United FC?
And remember, we don't want any old kind of justification. We actually want solid justification.
Well, one possible justification I could give is that Liverpool FC have clearly won more trophies than Manchester United FC in their history. Another kind of justification for my response is that Mohamed Salah, Liverpool's best player, has better statistics than Manchester United's best player, Cristiano Ronaldo. And another justification is that Liverpool and Manchester United recently had a game and Liverpool won 5-0. I will repeat that. Liverpool won 5-0. However, all of those things I have just mentioned, they could be classed as justification for my belief. But are they actually pieces of solid justification? Maybe it could be argued that they are not. In order to get solid justification for my claim that Liverpool FC is better than Manchester United FC, I need something more robust. So perhaps that would come in the form of a match. Maybe we get Liverpool and Manchester United to play each other again right now and see who wins. According to some people, that might still not be enough justification for making a claim one way or the other. Do we need to ask them to play 3 or 4 times and find out who wins over multiple games? So as you can see, there is justification for saying that Liverpool FC is better than Manchester United FC. But there are big questions about whether that kind of justification is solid or not. So all of this here at the moment is not necessarily relevant to your essay title, of course, but hopefully it just gives you a glimpse into the kind of response that we might offer when we are talking about this question.
So what we need to do now is start thinking more directly about the essay title. And I have to admit that this is quite a difficult essay, and it's not very easy to come up with some clear ideas straight away. So my process for this essay title is not the most linear, but I'm going to guide you through my thinking anyway in order to help you reach some hopefully useful ideas by the end of this video. The first thing that I did was brainstorm some of the main strengths of the AOK of the natural sciences. And that is a process that I am going to demonstrate for you now. So if you would like to follow along at home, I suggest that you get yourself a piece of paper, and also let's take this seriously. Let's get ourselves a big pencil. So the natural sciences. One thing that I think they like to talk about a lot is the idea of empiricism. And this is really difficult to write with a big pencil, but I am going to try it anyway just for fun. So, empiricism, the idea that knowledge is acquired through our senses and experiences. Natural scientists would argue that they gain their knowledge through observation, and that is what makes it so significant. Another key process that we see in the AOK of the natural sciences is the WOK of reason. I'm going to write down reasoning. It's a very logical AOK, and advocates of natural science, of the natural sciences, advocates of the WOK of reason would say that the inclusion of reason in this AOK makes it a stronger discipline. In addition, we could talk about, this is going to be very difficult to write, the scientific method. This is something that has been developed over many years. This is so difficult. Something that has been developed over many years in the natural sciences, and it's a process, a rigorous process through which scientists acquire their knowledge. It's very systematic. A lot of scientists follow this method. It basically starts off with your hypothesis, then your testing, then your verification of the results. It might culminate in some kind of peer review, and then the information will be published. So because it's not just a quick way of finding information, people would say that the scientific method is a tried, tested, thorough way to investigate new ideas. Another thing that we might want to talk about in the natural sciences is data. This is normally how natural scientists provide evidence of their ideas, and a lot of people will be inclined to think that data is a strong form of evidence. Obviously, some data has its problems. We might talk about that later. But these are all the things going in the favour of the natural sciences at the moment. Another thing that I would like to talk about for the natural sciences is the idea of pragmatism. I can't write. Pragmatism. Pragmatism, that the knowledge is useful to the people who learn it. And think about all of the development that we have made in our society, in our world history, through the evolution of the natural sciences. Natural scientists may argue that they are responsible for all of the development, or most of the development, that we have made in the last few centuries. Think about some of the groundbreaking discoveries that we have made in medicine, for example. And then another thing that I think is really key about the natural sciences is its awareness of its own faults. So difficult. Awareness of its own faults. Natural scientists will quite often admit, because they are rational people, that they don't have the answers for everything at this present moment. What they do is they collect enough data and observations to help them come up with their theories, like the Big Bang Theory. But they still accept that this is not fact, it's just a theory at this stage. Ultimately, if there was some kind of revelation that proved that the Big Bang Theory was wrong, natural scientists would probably adapt to that revelation because they have the evidence to change their knowledge. I think this makes the natural sciences stronger than other AOKs or other fields like religion, for example, because religious people might only stick to the dogma of their religious text, whereas scientists are willing to change their ideas based on the evidence provided to them. So just to recap, ladies and gentlemen, when we are thinking about whether the natural sciences knowledge can be regarded higher than the knowledge of other AOKs, natural scientists have the following things going in their favour. It is empirical knowledge. It is conducted through reasoning, the scientific method. We have data, it has high practical value, and the natural sciences is also aware of its own faults. So, I have just started my thinking process by listing out some of the key strengths associated with the natural sciences. In order to take my thinking one step further and to ascertain whether knowledge in the natural sciences can be regarded more highly than knowledge in other AOKs. What I ultimately need to do is compare the strengths of the natural sciences with the strengths of the other AOKs. So what you're going to see unfold in a moment is a series of little boxing fights between each AOK and the natural sciences. At this early stage in my thinking process, I'm not necessarily looking for a winner of each battle, but what I am doing is trying to identify some of the key battlegrounds. So let's see what happens.
On the screen here, you can see that I have the strengths of the natural sciences, but the arts and other AOKs can also perhaps argue that they are just as strong, if not stronger, than the natural sciences. They all have their own strengths. So for the arts, they might argue, an artist might argue, that they provide insights into different perspectives other than our own. All of these perspectives together help us to better understand the human condition. Art entertains us. It offers some kind of catharsis for those people who produce the art, some kind of relief. It also gives us as a viewer, an audience, an element of escape, especially with fantasy. And it is limitless. It's not bound by any specific limitations, boundaries. So those are things that might make the art look just as good, if not better, than the natural sciences. Moving on, history. History allows us to find out about the past, which has implications for our present and our future, and also helps us to reveal some aspects of our identity and culture. And it also has a strong methodology because it combines reasoning from the source interpretation with storytelling. So it brings in a bit of art too. Mathematics. Mathematics provides insights into the patterns of the universe. It always searches for mathematical proof. So it does have that kind of rigorous backbone, that solid baseline. It also has rigorous methodology because you do have things like peer review, especially when it comes to producing mathematical publications. Mathematicians might argue that they actually provide the basis or one basis for natural science discovery through its use of numbers. And just like the natural sciences, it has immense pragmatic value. The human sciences, they do a lot of the things that the natural sciences also proclaim that they do. I guess that the natural sciences would argue that they do those things better, but still a lot of the same kind of things going on here. People might argue that the human sciences focuses on human behaviour, and that is a more immediate concern for us as opposed to what is happening in nature. So there is a claim that the human sciences is perhaps better than the natural sciences. If any of these AOKs can prove that they are stronger than the natural sciences, then there is certainly not solid justification, maybe not even any justification for the natural sciences knowledge to be regarded more highly than the knowledge of another AOK.
Now that we have explored the strengths of the natural sciences and we have compared those strengths to the strengths of other AOKs, I think it is now time to start to group together some of our ideas. So on one hand, yes, there is a solid justification for regarding knowledge in the natural sciences more highly than knowledge in other AOKs. And on the other hand, no, there is not solid justification. On the board here, I have tried to come up with some ideas that I will talk about now. First of all, yes, there is solid justification. Well, we do have methodology. So, as I have talked about already, I've said this several times, the methodology in the natural sciences is quite rigorous, and for some people that means that it is the strongest A-OK. In addition, they have this emphasis on sense perception, reasoning. All of those things go in the natural sciences favour according to some people. And as well, we have the idea of the pragmatic value of the natural sciences, how it has some real world benefits that can be observed and identified by people in real life. So that perhaps makes it the strongest A-OK. However, ladies and gentlemen, I do have to say at this point that I would find it quite difficult to make that argument in an essay. For me, I am really swaying towards this point. No, there is not solid justification. And my main reason for this is because all of those strengths that I have just talked about can also be seen as slightly problematic. For instance, yes, in science we have sense perception, but sense perception is not always reliable. We do have reasoning, but again, there is an argument that our reason is not the most reliable WOK. Then we do have the scientific method, which is meant to act as protection against faults being made. However, faults have been made because of the scientific method, or not because of the scientific method, but the scientific method has failed to stop those faults emerging. I'll give you one example. There was a case a few years ago known as ClimateGate, and I'm going to switch the camera around so you can see me. ClimateGate. So ClimateGate was a case, a real life situation where some scientist from a university in England published data suggesting that global warming is a huge problem. It turns out that the data included in that report was actually not telling the whole truth. I think it had been exaggerated to some extent. People peer reviewed the essay, but they allowed the mistake to be published because it was in their interest to warn people about the dangers of climate change. So that shows us how the scientific method is not always as foolproof as we would like it to be. In addition, one thing that I have come across recently is known as the Rashomon effect. That is a really interesting idea. It's the idea that we all see things differently, and our perceptions are influenced in many different ways. Therefore, we can never reach a consensus about what is true and what is not. This means that various people could look at the same set of data produced by an experiment from the scientific method, and they could interpret that data in different ways. If you go onto Google, type in Rashomon effect, you'll find a great video from the people who make TED Talks, which explains the Rashomon effect in great detail. So yeah, there are lots of problems with the methodology of the scientific community. Also, we talked about the pragmatic value, but how exactly do we measure that pragmatic value? At the end of the day, we could measure it by using data, by conducting experiments, but if we do that, we are basically only measuring pragmatic value through a scientific lens. If we are doing it through a scientific lens, that means that science is always going to win. And can we actually measure it accurately? What do we do? Do we think about every single piece of knowledge ever produced and somehow rate it 1 to 10? I don't know. It's very difficult. So the pragmatic value argument could be pulled apart as well. All of this, ladies and gentlemen, makes me think the following. No, there is not solid justification for regarding knowledge in the natural sciences as better, greater, higher than knowledge in other AOKs. And the key reason is this. There is justification for the natural sciences knowledge being superior, but it's not solid justification. There is no absolute proof, and that is the key point. There is no absolute proof. Therefore, it is not solid justification. I would just like to stop for a moment here and take a breather, and I want to share with you an extra thought that I have just had about this question. So, after listing some of the ideas why there is a solid justification and why not, I have come to the realization that it is possibly dependent on the context of the particular situation in mind. For example, if there is a medical emergency, then surely knowledge in the natural sciences should be deemed most important, most valuable. However, if we are looking at how to write a novel, then surely we don't need to rely on the natural sciences for that. So actually, all of this could just be dependent on the situation. In some situations, there is solid justification for saying that the natural sciences is the best. In other situations, there is quite probably not solid justification. In regards to structure, you have several different options. Some of these are quite similar to what we have encountered with the previous essay titles. So a basic structure would be introduction, AOK 1, AOK 2, conclusion. Something that I believe is much better is this one. So introduction, and in that introduction state whether your answer is yes, no or maybe. You then provide your first reason and explore that through one AOK. Your second reason explored via another AOK, and then a conclusion. And an extra structure is this one. Introduction, first reason, talk about both AOKs. Second reason, talk about both AOKs, and a conclusion. You may have questions about which other AOK you are meant to talk about. Obviously, you are expected to talk about the natural sciences and only one other AOK. I would say come up with your points, come up with your main ideas, think about where your passions lie, what you are most interested in, what you can talk about a lot, and then make a decision about which AOK you're going to talk about. So I wouldn't start by deciding on an extra AOK. I would come up with my major thematic points and then decide which other AOK I'm going to focus on in this essay.
As always, I have some extension questions for you. I'll just quickly go through these. Which is more significant, the impact on the individual or the impact on the collective? That is something you might want to think about when we think about the pragmatic value of a certain AOK. Would the world be better if we just focused on the natural sciences? What would be missed if we did just focus on the natural sciences. If the natural sciences is meant to be so superior and should be so highly regarded, then perhaps there's an argument that the world would function fine if we just relied on that AOK. And finally, do natural scientists even believe that this is the most superior AOK? When I speak to natural scientists, they are usually very rational people, and a lot of them would probably say, no, it's not the most superior, because all of the AOKs have their value. So if natural scientists don't even believe this, if there's no justification to say that natural scientists believe this, how can we as TOK students possibly argue that their AOK is the strongest?
Okay, so that is it for today. A bit of a messy video, lots of ideas all over the place, and that's because it is ultimately a very complicated question. Maybe some people can do it better than me. Maybe their videos should be regarded more highly than mine. That's fair enough. I just hope though that some of the ideas shared here in this video can open doors for you and allow you to develop your own ideas. If it does that, then it served its purpose. Thank you for all the likes and subscriptions. That's really nice to see. Some great comments too, and lots of interesting exchanges and messages with people from all over the world who have watched these videos, so I really appreciate that. I am always happy to help. I'm looking forward to making some more videos, so I will see you again next week for essay title number 4.